know that most of what you've seen, read, or heard about Billy the Kid is untrue? My name is Gail Cooper. I'm a medical doctor and forensic psychiatrist. My specialty is murder case consultation for the defense. For 20 years, I've used my expertise to uncover the real Billy the Kid. Researching over 40,000 pages of archival documents and books, I've written the revisionist history. It's shocking, it's liberating, and I've written books demolishing the hoaxes, hijacking the history. My talks will share with you what I've found. Cover-ups, misinformation, and fakery, to use Old West lingo, will bite the dust. This talk exposes the Brushy Bill's story's faked return of Billy Bonney to New Mexico territory in the hoax's book, Alias Billy the Kid. The information is from my book, Cracking the Billy the Kid Imposter Hoax of Brushy Bill Roberts. The starting gate fakery in Alias Billy the Kid's autobiographical The Brushy Bill Story, presenting his family tree and early years as Billy the Kid, is debunked in Talk 60, linked below. Brushy's make-believe life continues with the 1877 return of Billy the Kid to New Mexico territory. Semi-fictional sources remain the vulnerability in Brushy's coaching. Primarily used were Pat Garrett's 1882 book, The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid, and Walter Noble Burns's 1926 book, The Saga of Billy the Kid. Brushy, as Billy, travels with outlaw Jesse Evans to Mesilla, where he joins, quote, Jimmy McDaniel, misspelled, Billy Morton, and Frank Baker. This made-up scenario was lifted from The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid. Having Billy and Jesse join a party of outlaws, it's stated. Among this party of cowboys were James McDaniels, William Morton, and Frank Baker, all well known from the Rio Grande to the Pecos. In fact, McDaniels isn't part of the history. William Buck Morton was foreman of the Santa Fe Rings Pecos River cow camp, and Frank Baker was a member of Real Jesse Evans's gang. Real Billy rode with Jesse's gang only in September of 1877. Brushy then name-dropped Tom O'Keefe as Billy's companion for crossing the Guadalupe Mountains on his way to the Pecos River settlements. Brushy claims they're fighting Apaches. The sources for this era were The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid and The Saga of Billy the Kid, which fabricated, quote, a running battle. Also, Alias Billy the Kid's source footnote is historian Eve Ball's article, Billy Strikes the Pecos, from the 1949-50 New Mexico folklore record, likely contributed by folklorist Sonneshan. It claimed that Apaches, quote, struck. In reality, only O'Keefe was ambushed by Apaches, who also stole Billy's horse, forcing him to cross the 40-mile route across the Guadalupe Mountains on foot. For his usual confabulating around lifted names, Brushy was thrown by the word mountains in Guadalupe Mountains. So he made up that his feet got cut up by, quote, mountain brush. That era was also lifted from The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid, stating, more than once, clambering up that mountainside, the kid trusted his whole weight to his sinewy hands, and more than once did he dare an unsupported leap into the air. Safely the Kid reached the top of the peak. The saga of Billy the Kid repeated the era and fictionalized. When his horse was shot under him, Billy scrambled up a steep hillside, dodging among giant boulders and working gradually to the top of the ridge. In fact, the Guadalupes, where Billy crossed, are just a flat, sparsely vegetated limestone plain sloping gradually down to the Pecos River settlement of Seven Rivers, where Billy ended up at the home of Mam and High School Jones and their children. Billy's real crisis was almost dying from no water and getting foot injuries from his boot soles wearing out in the 3-day crossing. Lacking sources for events at Billy's Pecos River area arrival, Brushy just name-dropped and confabulated. He stated, "Jim and John Jones were working for Chisholm, so I went to work for them, I think up at Bosque Grande. Frank McNabb, misspelled, was foreman. I worked for Maxwell for a short time at Bosque Redondo." In reality, the Jones boys worked for Chisholm prior to 1877, but by late 1877, they had a Roswell store with their father, High School. Frank McNabb was no foreman. He was a cattle detective with Consortium, Hunter and Evans, which had bought John Chisholm's herd, and in 1878 became head of the regulators after Dick Brewer's murder by Buckshot Roberts. Bosque Grande was Chisholm's original ranch south of Fort Sumner. It was not connected to Billy until 1879 or 1880 when he sold Russell's stock to its new owner, Dan Dedrick, to whom he gave the famous tintype. By then, John Chisholm lived near Roswell at his South Spring River Ranch, and Billy never worked for the Jones family, Chisholm, or the Maxwells. And Bosque Redondo was the name of the Apache and Navajo concentration camp guarded by Fort Sumner in the 1860s. In 1870, Lucien Bonaparte Maxwell bought the fort and got some of its surrounding land, naming his new town Fort Sumner, which Billy would have used, not Bosque Redondo. But one shouldn't miss that Brushy's name-dropping trick passed for special knowledge to a reader ignorant of real history. Brushy threw in that he also went on a Chisholm cattle drive to Dodge City in the fall of 1877, going up, quote, "the Loving Trail or the Goodnight Trail. This was the time we had the tintype made at the end of the cattle trail in Dodge City." The source footnote reveals how Brushy built this fakery. Sonneshin relates that Morrison took Brushy to visit Sam and Bill Jones of the Jones family, which had first housed Billy, and they showed Brushy a photograph. Brushy told them it was made in Dodge City and said one man was himself. They gave Brushy a copy, and Morrison and Sonneshin cut out that one man to use as a photo of young Brushy in alias Billy the Kid. In reality, the actual Goodnight Loving Trail was not part of the history, and in the fall of 1877, Real Billy rode in September with Jesse Evans and his gang, then was hired in October as a Tunstall ranch hand. And the photograph was of the Seven Rivers boys, with the one Brushy made up as himself being Marion Turner. and Sam and Bill Jones refused to sign Morrison's pre-written affidavit trying to make them swear that Brushy was Billy. Then Brushy said he worked with Jesse Evans at, quote, Murphy's Seven Rivers Camp that winter of 1877. The source footnote for that era is Charles Siringo's 1920 largely fictitious book, History of Billy the Kid, which lifted from the authentic life of Billy the Kid. It stated, McDaniels, Morton, and Baker persuaded Billy to join the Murphy and Dolan outfit and become one of their fighting cowboys. This he agreed to do and was put on the payroll at good wages. In reality, Billy never worked for that Pecos River cow camp, which was not at Seven Rivers, but south of it, and it was called the Dolan Cow Camp after James Dolan, who acted as a Lincoln County front for Santa Fe ringhead Thomas Benton Catron, the real owner. As to Jesse Evans, Brushy made up that they were, quote, like brothers, Rome, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, and Old Mexico, and I tried to spring him from jail in Stockton one time after they killed Chapman. The source footnote for that era came from Morrison's misreading his prompting research. From Adjutant General's files for August 1880 in the Austin, Texas State Library, it was August 26 and September 5, 1880 reports by a Lieutenant C.L. Neville about intercepting a letter by his Fort Davis, Texas prisoner, Jesse Evans, who'd killed Texas Ranger George Bingham that July. It was addressed to Billy Antrim, misspelled alias Kid, asking for rescue. Morrison apparently missed that its being intercepted meant Billy didn't get it, and no rescue attempt occurred. In reality, Billy was Jesse's enemy, so a rescue attempt made no sense. Billy had testified against Jesse to get him indicted as an accessory to Houston Chapman's February 18, 1879 murder. But on March 18, 1879, Jesse had escaped his Fort Stanton incarceration and fled the territory for Texas, where he then murdered Ranger Bingham in 1880 with his new gang. Brushy, being unaware of why Billy had parted with Jesse Evans in 1877, makes up that they argued, resulting in Billy visiting the Coes and, quote, stopping at Tunstall's to get something to eat. So Tunstall hires him. The prompt source footnote is George Coe's 1934 autobiography, Frontier Fighter. It stated, with kindly feeling, Tunstall was drawn to the boy and invited him to lunch. Brushy then dropped names, faking Tunstall's employees, including unrelated ones from Billy's 1880 history 3 years later, Dave Rudabaugh, Tom Pickett, and Wilson, missing first name of Billy. Brushy's erroneous addition of Rudabaugh and Wilson may be explained by Morrison's typed note in Sonishen's collected papers about a Las Vegas Gazette prompt article of November 30th, 1880, listing them in Billy the Kid's fictional gang. It stated, last week, 3 of the crowd, Dave Rudabaugh, Billy the Kid, and Billy Wilson, went to the Oaks to dispose of some of their surplus stock. But Brushy and team missed the real history. Tunstall was developing cattle ranches on the Penasco as well as the Felis River. He gifted Billy, in partnership with fellow employee Fred Waite, a Penasco River ranch, arguably Billy's proudest moment and his heartbreaking loss after Tunstall's murder. Billy gave the information in his June 8, 1878 deposition to Frank Warner Angel, investigator for the Departments of Justice and the Interior, unknown to Brushy and team. Found by historian Frederick Nolan, the deposition was cited in his 1956 article, Sidelight on the Tunstall Murder, a year after Alias Billy the Kid was published. So, Brushy's autobiography as Billy the Kid, covering re-entry to New Mexico territory, shows no special knowledge, parroting of traceable sources, confabulating fatal errors and fatal ignorance, all proving he wasn't Billy Bonney. But it shows the labor exerted to trick readers. The next talk will cover the Brushy Bill story's faking of the Lincoln County War period.